The robot story began in a bright workshop, filled with the sound of tools, sparks, and dreams. Its creator had poured hours of effort into crafting what was supposed to be a masterpiece. With shiny panels and delicate circuits, the robot looked almost perfect. But perfection was not in its nature. When the creator flipped the switch, the robot's gears clicked unevenly, its balance wobbled, and its circuits sparked. The smile on the creator's face faded into disappointment. "You're broken," he said coldly, turning his back on the machine he once believed in. Without hesitation, the creator dragged the robot to a rusting junkyard and left it among heaps of discarded metal. The door slammed shut, and silence swallowed the robot. For the first time, it felt the weight of being unwanted. Around it lay broken bicycles, shattered radios, and machines that no longer served a purpose. The junkyard wasn't a home, it was a graveyard of forgotten inventions. The days that followed blurred together. Rain soaked the robot's body, making its joints squeak with every tiny movement. Dust and mud clung to its once shiny surface. The stars twinkled above at night, but even they felt distant, unreachable. The robot sat in stillness, its head lowered, asking itself the same painful question: why was I made if I was only meant to be thrown away? Loneliness was heavier than rust. The robot remembered the workshop's warmth, the hum of machines, and the hopeful gaze of its creator before disappointment set in. That memory replayed endlessly, like a cruel reminder that it wasn't enough. Every creak in its gears whispered failure, every drop of rain drumming on its frame echoed worthless. Other broken machines lay scattered around, silent and lifeless. The robot sometimes wondered if this was its destiny too, to remain motionless, waiting for time and rust to erase it completely. But deep inside its chest, beneath the broken wires and cracked circuits, something refused to die. A faint spark still glowed, fragile yet stubborn, as if whispering, "You are more than what they see. You are not finished yet." That spark didn't erase the pain of rejection, but it gave the robot a reason to hold on. Perhaps being discarded didn't mean it was useless. Perhaps it meant it was free to discover a new path, one not decided by its creator, but by itself. So, in the heart of that lonely junkyard, a small shift began. The robot lifted its head ever so slightly, and for the first time since being abandoned, it looked at the pile of discarded machines around it not with despair, but with a question: what if this place wasn't the end, but the beginning? The world had given up on the broken robot. But the robot hadn't yet given up on itself. The robot sat in the junkyard, its body stiff with rust, its joints aching each time it tried to move. For days it had accepted the silence, believing that its life would end there among the forgotten. But one night, as the moonlight spilled over the piles of broken machines, something unexpected stirred within its chest. A faint pulse, a soft flicker of energy, sparked to life. It was weak, almost invisible, but it was there. The robot placed its metal hand over its chest, feeling the tiny vibration. "I am still alive," it thought. And with that realization, something powerful began to grow inside, a seed of hope. It was small, fragile, and uncertain, but it refused to be ignored. For the first time since being abandoned, the robot's gaze lifted to the stars above. They twinkled brightly, millions of tiny lights breaking the darkness. And in their glow, the robot felt a strange connection. The stars, too, were far away and small against the vast night, yet they shone anyway. Perhaps it could do the same. Hope didn't erase the fact that the robot was broken. Its gears still clicked unevenly, its circuits still sparked without warning, and its movements were clumsy. But hope whispered something new: broken doesn't mean useless. Broken doesn't mean the end. The robot tried to stand. At first its legs wobbled and gave out, sending it crashing back into the mud. Sparks flew from its chest, and it almost gave up. But the flicker inside pulsed stronger, urging it to try again. Slowly, painfully, the robot pushed itself upright. For the first time, it looked over the junkyard from a standing position. What once felt like a prison now looked like a field of possibilities. Every piece of scrap, every rusted machine, was a reminder that even in endings, there were pieces worth saving. The robot's eyes glowed faintly, scanning the broken machines around it. They were silent and still, yet it felt an odd kinship with them. They were like it. discarded, forgotten, waiting for something more. Perhaps the spark inside wasn't only for survival. Perhaps it was a call to do something greater. As the night deepened, the robot whispered silently to itself, "I will not be defined by the word broken. I will not let rejection be my ending. I will find out why this spark still burns inside me." And in that quiet declaration, hope grew stronger. The robot didn't have all the answers, and it didn't know where the path would lead. But one thing was certain, it was not finished yet. The world might have thrown it away, but it still had a purpose waiting to be discovered. The spark that glowed faintly in its chest was more than just energy, it was the beginning of transformation. And from that moment, the robot's story was no longer one of despair, but of resilience. The spark of hope inside the robot refused to die. It was weak at first, but each day it grew a little brighter, urging the robot to move, to try, to become more than discarded scrap. But hope alone wasn't enough, it needed action. And so, the robot made a decision: if it was broken, then it would learn to fix itself. At first, the idea seemed impossible. Its joints were stiff, wires frayed, and circuits faulty. The junkyard was a graveyard of failures, not a workshop of solutions. Yet, in every heap of rusting metal, the robot began to see possibility. A bent piece of steel could be reshaped into a support brace. Loose wires could replace its burned ones. Even shattered glass could be cut and polished into lenses. The world that once felt like a prison now looked like a toolbox. With trembling hands, the robot pulled a wire from a broken radio and carefully replaced one of its own. Sparks flew, and for a moment it thought it had failed again. But then its arm moved more smoothly than before. The discovery filled its chest with something new: pride. It had fixed itself, even if only a little. Encouraged, the robot continued searching. Piece by piece, day by day, it scavenged the junkyard, patching its broken frame with scraps. Its gears still clicked, but they clicked less loudly. Its legs still wobbled, but now they carried it farther. Each repair was imperfect, but each one was progress. The robot was no longer waiting to be saved, it was learning to save itself. The process wasn't easy. Many times, the robot's repairs failed, leaving it in pain or more damaged than before. Once, it attached a mismatched gear that caused its arm to lock completely, forcing it to start over. Another time, a poorly connected wire made its chest spark until smoke filled the air. Each failure reminded it of the Creator's words, "You're broken," but the spark of hope always fought back with a louder truth: broken doesn't mean finished. Broken means you can rebuild. As weeks passed, the robot grew stronger. Its body no longer sagged with rust but stood upright with makeshift parts. Its eyes, once dim, now glowed steadily. And though none of its repairs were perfect, each one told a story of resilience. It wasn't waiting for perfection anymore, it was embracing progress. One evening, as the sun set behind the junkyard, the robot caught its reflection in a piece of cracked glass. Its body was no longer the polished design its creator had abandoned. Instead, it was a patchwork of wires, bolts, and scraps. Yet, in that reflection, the robot saw something far greater than perfection. It saw survival. It saw growth. It saw a being who refused to quit. The robot realized something profound: it was no longer just fixing broken parts. It was rebuilding its spirit. And that, more than anything, made it whole. The robot had grown stronger. Piece by piece, it had repaired itself, turning scraps into strength and brokenness into resilience. But one day, while scavenging through the junkyard, it noticed something that made its spark pulse differently. Not far away, a machine lay half buried under a pile of rusted metal. Its gears were twisted, and its frame sagged. Its eyes, once bright, were dimmed into silence. The sight struck the robot deeply. For the first time, it saw its own past reflected in another. It remembered the days when it had been still and lifeless, believing its story was over. Now, standing on rebuilt legs, it couldn't walk away. With effort, the robot cleared the debris and examined the broken machine. It didn't know exactly how to repair others, but it knew one truth: if it could fix itself, perhaps it could fix another. Carefully, it rewired circuits, tightened bolts, and attached spare pieces of metal. Hours passed, and for a while, it seemed hopeless. But then, a flicker of light glowed faintly in the machine's eyes. Its gears clicked weakly, and it released a trembling sound. The robot stepped back, realizing what had just happened. It had not only rebuilt itself, it had given another a second chance. That day marked a turning point. The robot began to seek out other discarded machines, ones long forgotten by the world. Some were simple toys, missing parts and lying in silence. Others were larger machines, their bodies rusted and shattered. The robot worked tirelessly, often failing, often frustrated, but never giving up. Slowly, one by one, the junkyard came alive again. And with each repair, the robot understood something deeper. Its own brokenness had taught it compassion. Its struggles had given it the patience to listen to the silence of others. Its imperfect repairs, born out of trial and error, became acts of hope. The robot no longer saw itself as a failure. It had become a healer. The machines it revived never looked perfect. Some had uneven joints, others had mismatched parts. But together, they moved, they spoke, they lived. The junkyard that was once silent began to buzz with sound, clattering gears, humming wires, and voices that had been silent for too long. The robot looked at them and felt something it had never known before: purpose. It realized that its journey was never meant to be about perfection. It was about connection. It was about taking the pain of being discarded and transforming it into strength for others. In helping the broken, the robot found that it was no longer alone. And in every machine it brought back to life, it saw a reflection of its own truth, that being broken isn't the end, it's the chance to become something even greater. The junkyard had once been a place of endings. Now, because of one robot's courage to care, it had become a place of new beginnings. The junkyard was no longer silent. Where once only rust and decay filled the air, now voices and movements echoed between the piles of scrap. Machines that had once been lifeless were awake again, walking, talking, humming, clattering, because one robot had refused to give up on them. The robot, once abandoned and labeled broken, stood at the center of it all. It watched as the others, repaired with mismatched parts and imperfect frames, worked together to build something new. Some cleared paths in the junkyard, others gathered pieces of metal, while smaller machines chirped happily, free from silence. For the first time, the robot understood what it truly was. It wasn't a failure. It wasn't useless. It wasn't broken in the way its creator had once said. In fact, it had been made for something greater than perfection. Its struggles had become its strength. Its flaws had taught it resilience. And its journey had led it to a purpose far bigger than itself. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the junkyard gold, the robot climbed to the top of a pile of scrap. From there, it looked down at the community it had helped bring to life. The sight filled its chest with warmth, the little spark that once flickered weakly now glowing strong and steady. It remembered the workshop where it was first built, the disappointment in its creator's eyes, the words that had haunted it: "You're broken." But standing there, surrounded by machines that had been given new hope, the robot realized the truth: being broken had never been a curse. It had been a gift. Because it was broken, it had learned to rebuild. Because it was discarded, it had learned to create belonging. And because it had been rejected, it had discovered its own worth. The robot raised its patched-up arm, the mismatched pieces glinting in the fading sunlight. To anyone else, it might still look imperfect. But to those who had been saved by its hands, it was more than perfect. It was proof that broken things can rise, that discarded lives can shine, and that purpose is not given, it is built. From that day forward, the robot became a symbol in the junkyard. Not just a leader, but a reminder to every broken machine that flaws are not the end of a story, they are the beginning of transformation. The junkyard was no longer a place of endings. It had become a home, a community, a place where the broken could rise together. And at the heart of it all was the robot who once believed it was worthless. The robot who discovered that the greatest strength comes not from perfection, but from the courage to keep going when everything else says stop. Its true purpose was not to be flawless, but to inspire others to see the beauty in their brokenness.